welcome to another Looney Tunes review video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to follow my journey to review all 1000 classic Looney Tunes shorts, and give this video a like as well. So this is a review for The Girl at the Ironing Board, released in 1934. It's the 85th of the series, and it's directed by Friz Freleng. Currently there's no physical media release for this one, but thankfully we've got a beautiful HD version that's lurking about. Hopefully that'll make its way on a disc at some point. But in case you haven't seen this one, this is another one of those things come to life shorts, where in this case, it's all about a laundromat where we see the workers, well, working at a laundromat in the beginning, and once they leave, the clothes come to life, and some of the clothes are positively evil as well, which is kind of weird, but anyway, it is what it is. So first up, you're going to see a re-edit of the original commentary I did before I had to take that down. You'll hear some new thoughts from me, and then you'll hear from my good friend Manny Cruz, the Toonie tenor, who will go through the song's origins for you. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now, we got the intro song, which is, you know, it's a pretty funny song. Look how happy they are doing their washing. And I do like how it's contrasted with some of the older ladies who are just sick of it. Yeah, we gotta have some sharp collars. So some of these gags are actually pretty good, and this one has also got some very interesting animation. Of course, the button breaking department, that would have been interesting. But I like this one. And then night fell. Bang, night. That got me caught me off guard, to be honest. So here's where the cartoon, I guess, begins proper. And it's very similar to a lot of the previous Merrie Melodies where, you know, inanimate objects come to life. So in this case, it becomes kind of like, How Do I Know It's Sunday, the previous cartoon. Love the way that they animate the hat. Because that would have been fairly tricky to do, I would have imagined. I would think that the animator would have maybe just drawn like a circle where the head would be, and then they'll just draw the hat and then erase the pencil, and that's that, to make it all consistent, and then add the dimensions in. But I'd imagine it wouldn't be the most easiest thing ever. And there's some really interesting gags like this, you know, the gloves playing the piano, and got the accordion there. I do like when the so-called villain comes into play, which will come into play in a few moments, which is par for course in these cartoons. But of course, he's got to have his twirled mustache. The olden style villains, gotta love those. And what he does to the, I guess, good guy clothes, yeah, I suppose we'll call him that. Yep, he's even got like a little mustache there. But look what he does here to the, he just drops his pants. And she's so bashful about it too. How can you have evil, underwear? Because I think that was like underwear that you would have worn at the time. And it's just weird, But if you always want to see clothes fight, well, here you go. It's really full on, isn't it? Yep, he's gonna get his just desserts. I mean, yep, pop him in the manual washing machine, and yeah, give him a good cleaning. So those are my original thoughts. Now, rewatching this one, especially in this brand new restoration, it's definitely in the vein of Those Were Wonderful Days, which is a short I reviewed not too long ago, at least for the year 1934 anyway, where it's got your vaudevillian villain and your typical hero and a damsel in distress. Only this time it's their clothes, but hey, it's still pretty much the same thing. In fact, some of the designs are even very similar from that short, so I guess this is like a spiritual successor? I don't know, they probably weren't thinking that in depth anyway, but it's definitely interesting to see. So there is a song being promoted here, as all Merrie Melodies were at this time, which is The Girl with the Ironing Board. My friend Manny Cruz will go through that very shortly, but I have to say, it's actually a very nice little tune. I quite like this one. It's nice and pleasant. I thought it was great. So, going through the short itself from start to finish for the bits that I did miss. In this restoration, I noticed something new, and that apparently the Looney Tunes are being featured at the Opera House. I would imagine that at the local opera or Opry house in this small town, they'll probably show movies every so often, and no doubt they probably would show a few cartoon shorts, and in this case, the Looney Tunes. So there you go. Naturally, this takes place at the turn of the century. The Looney Tunes didn't exist at the time, so I'll let you figure that one out. And as the song goes on, it's kind of interesting to see the young ladies doing this laundromat job. They seem a lot more happier, whereas the older ladies who have probably been doing this sort of job all their lives, just absolutely sick of it. They just want to retire, assuming they're even able to. But yeah, it was just a nice little touch that I noticed. And we even get a ridiculous gag with the stockings on the ladies' hands. It's silly, but alright, whatever. I still like it. But what's interesting, the button breaker, I couldn't really see what it is, because I'm certainly not an expert on laundromats from the early 20th century, or the turn of the 19th century for that matter. But it looks like it's a job that's long lost to time, kind of like phone operators, elevator operators, and that sort of thing. At a guess, and you guys can correct me in the comments below, but it's my understanding that some of these buttons were quite delicate, or they were quite valuable because of the material used to make them, unlike these days where it's pretty much just plastic. So some of them might be made of ivory and that sort of stuff. So the button breaker would remove the buttons, allowing the shirt to be washed or whatever item it is, and then they would have the buttons sewn back on. I could be wrong, but let me know in the comments below. But what I do know is that zippers were becoming more and more common around the turn of the century, and it made sense. Zippers were just seen as more efficient. But yes, that's why he's disgusted at seeing a zipper. Now, one reference I got wrong in the original commentary, I thought this was actually quite interesting, but you see NRA, and yes, we all know what the NRA is now. I won't get into that, but this is the other NRA, the National Recovery Administration, around this time, so around the mid-30s. And if you've seen Duck Soup, you would see that in the very beginning where it says, "We do our part," and you'll see it, I think, even in the Three Stooges short. But it was an agency established by US President Franklin Roosevelt in 1933, and the goal of the administration was to eliminate cutthroat competition. And it also meant that companies had to create like fair practices and that sort of thing. But in 1935, the US Supreme Court declared it unconstitutional, so the gag here, with the bird making sure that things were fair, and it's 5 o'clock and you have to stop working. So there we are. So if you see that NRA for anything between 1933 and 1935, that's what it is, not anything to do with guns. And the gag with the punch cards is kind of weird, especially nowadays when you punch in for work. Usually it's through a computer with a fingerprint or facial ID or swipe card, whatever. But back then you'd use punch cards to check in and check out of work. And my guess that this gag, which isn't entirely clear, but looks like that the ladies just arrived late and they're just changing the time to show that they did come on time, just to manipulate the system. At least that's what I think, but let me know in the comments if you think otherwise. So we see the hero appearing, and so after hours, much like these days with libraries and that sort of thing, you could deposit your items after hours through a slot, and then the workers the next day would check on the items and do what they need to do. So in this case, we see the hero, and he appears to have the same design as Those Were Wonderful Days as well. And once we are back inside, we see a poster saying, "Oh, you kid," which funnily enough shows a kid there, but the origins come from a song in 1909 which implied adultery, and it even caused a major scandal at the time. So "Oh You Kid" became synonymous with adultery. I don't know, the woman clothes that we see here, was she already married and committing adultery with the hero's clothes? I don't know. Definitely looking too much into this one, let me tell you that. Oh, and we also see 23 Skidoo, which is an old-time saying for leaving very quickly, and I hope it one day comes back into the vernacular. That would be very nice. So that way, when I finish work, I can just say, 23 Skidoo. And we briefly hear the woman clothes saying, "Come up and see me sometime," and that's attributed to Mae West, but the actual line was, "Why don't you come up sometime and see me?" It's kind of changed throughout the history there, even by this point, because that reference would have only been a few years old at that point, but it's definitely attributed to Mae West nonetheless. We see Bedlam Piano Company. The only reference I could find was Badlam Piano Makers of New York, and that was like a small-scale piano maker, because there weren't really big factories or anything. You just have these specialist places that would make pianos, and they would take a while doing so, because they're usually just a few people, and that's it. But I couldn't find anything else about them, so if you know what the reference would be, let me know in the comments, but that's all I could find in any case. So the short now becomes a Things Coming to Life one, where the animation here, some of which would even be reused in Billboard Frolics, which is full of reused animation. But anyway, it's still fun to look at. I quite like this little sequence here. Though we do get this bizarre joke of baby clothes needing to be changed. Sure, why not? Why not? What is a Things Coming to Life short without a villain at the end, especially in the last third? So we see this villain. Again, the design appears to be the same from Those Were Wonderful Days. But even villains need to have their clothes washed. They all have their things they need to do. And I do like the added touch where once the villain's clothes becomes, I guess, a villain, with the ascot in place of the mustache, which I thought was a nice touch, but we hear a hiss coming from a nearby heater, and that's referencing to the fact that during vaudeville, people would hiss in the theatre when the villain would step out on stage, twirling his mustache and doing the evil laugh and all that, boo, hiss. So that's that. And yeah, the rest of the short is just your typical vaudeville situation of a damsel in distress and a mustache-twirling villain. So it's the usual stuff, but it's quite fun. And again, I love the fight animation, and I do wonder who would have done it. So I thought it was a nice touch. And right at the end, when we see that that's all folks, a person just happens to appear out of the hero's clothes. So that's quite bizarre, isn't it? But anyway, whatever. So I've prattled on long enough, so my good friend Manny Cruz, the Toonie Tenor, will now go through the origins of the song and anything that's music related. So take it away, Manny.
Hi everyone, this is Manny Cruz, the Toonie Tenor, coming at you with the latest edition of It's Time for Manny's Music Time, with music trivia for you today. Bum! The 1934 Merry Melody, The Girl at the Ironing Board, directed by Friz Freleng. So, let's jump right into the cues for this one, shall we? So there were three main cues, not including I Think You're Ducky, the Merry Melodies theme, but the three that I want to focus on are as follows. The title song, of course, The Girl at the Ironing Board, which you hear throughout.
But a girl who works in a laundry has a dream lover all of her own. A lover unseen whose love she keeps clean with water and soap and a washing machine.
The song Dames and the song Shake Your Powder Puff. So let's go in order. Let's go back to the title track. So, The Girl at the Ironing Board was written by the songwriting team of Harry Warren and Al Dubin for the 1934 musical Dames, starring Ruby Keeler, Dick Powell, Zazu Pitts, Joan Blondell, and Hugh Herbert. This song is featured in a part of the film where you actually see women laundering clothing and ironing them, so on and so forth. Even at one point, some of the shirts of men that they are cleaning and laundering sing and talk back to them, so you can see where the inspiration, where the cartoon came from. And the whole film has choreography and dance numbers done by Busby Berkeley. Busby Berkeley. I always say his name wrong. And in that scene with the title track, you actually hear a little snippet of Frühlingslied, or Spring Song, from Felix Mendelssohn. So I thought that was kind of neat. The next song you hear is called Dames, which is also from the same film. Warren and Dubin with the music for that. Harry Warren wrote the music and Al Dubin wrote the lyrics. And you hear that song in the scene when the two lovebirds, the humans, they're outside of the laundromat, or I guess it's a laundromat, or, the place, the laundry. And they drop their clothing off the bundles, and you hear that song playing in the background. And the last main cue in this cartoon is called Shake Your Powder Puff, which was written by Sammy Fine and Irving Cahall. That's the song that's featured in the scene where the Long John stands to the music and they put the roller derbies on. And I really got a kick out of the music of that scene. So if you want to learn a little bit more about Sammy Fine and Irving Cahall, please check out the commentary for One Step Ahead of My Shadow for information about those songwriters. And when I get to the cartoon of the same name, Shake Your Powder Puff, later on in 1934, I'll try to dig a little deeper into the song itself. I've talked about Harry Warren before in other commentaries, and I always kept saying, eventually I'll get to Al Dubin, blah, 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 Al Dubin, because Harry Warren and Al Dubin, they were a very prominent songwriting team. So I think now is the opportunity to talk about Al Dubin, since I already spoke about Harry Warren. And if you want more information about Harry Warren, please check out A Great Big Bunch of You, where I really dig deep into his life and history, because he's one of the most famous American songwriters in history, and so is Al Dubin. Al Dubin is more of a lyricist than the writer of the actual music itself. So here's a biography of Al Dubin that I got from the Songwriters Hall of Fame website, and I quote, Al Dubin was born on June 10th, 1891 in Zurich, Switzerland. His family, originally from Russia, moved to Philadelphia. By the way, I forgot to mention his first name is Alexander. Alexander Dubin is his full name. His family, originally from Russia, moved to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania when he was 2. His father was a medical doctor and his mother was a science teacher. Neither wanted him to pursue a career in music. By age 14, Dubin was cutting his classes at school to see Broadway shows, and he would spend time on West 28th Street, which is where Tin Pan Alley was located, where he tried to sell special material to vaudeville entertainers. Dubin chose to complete high school at a private institution, Perkiomen Seminary, an unusual choice for a Jewish boy. He excelled in athletics and was captain of the football team as well as track and basketball. However, his love of alcohol, girls, and nights out often resulted in suspensions, and just a few days before graduation, he was expelled. He enrolled in medical school, but was expelled from that in 1911. After that, he became associated with the Whitmar Music Company and worked with them as a staff writer for many years. In 1916, he wrote his first hit song with composer Rennie Carmack, "'Twas Only an Irishman's Dream." However, no successes followed, and he began working as a singing waiter in a bar until he entered the army in World War I. After the war, he resumed songwriting, working with various composers. Some of his early hits were Halfway to Heaven, written with J. Russell Robinson, and A Cup of Coffee, A Sandwich, and You, written with Joseph Meyer. Dubin's daughter said that the inspiration for the title was the line from an Omar Khayyam poem, "A loaf of bread, a jug of wine, and thou beside me in the desert," unquote. Warner Brothers fans, you recognize that song as a cue that's been used frequently by Carl Stalling. A cup of coffee, a sandwich, and you. So you usually see in the scene where a character is eating food. So back to his biography, and I quote, in 1926, he was writing music to promote silent films and was one of the first songwriters hired for talking pictures in the late 20s. He wrote many songs with Joseph Burke, such as Tiptoe Through the Tulips, Painting the Clouds with Sunshine, and The Kiss Waltz. In the 1930s, he teamed with Harry Warren, with whom he collaborated throughout the remainder of the decade. The two wrote as many as 60 songs per year, including We're in the Money, 42nd Street, Shuffle Off Buffalo, You're Getting to Be a Habit with Me, The Boulevard of Broken Dreams, I Only Have Eyes for You, About 8:45, With Plenty of Money in You, September in the Rain, Lulu's Back in Town, and the 1935 Academy Award winner, The Lullaby of Broadway. After 1939, Dubin wrote with many other composers, including Jimmy McHugh, Will Groves, and the very famous Duke Ellington. Dubin provided the lyrics to the song Indian Summer, set to music written in 1919 by the great composer Victor Herbert, who died in 1924. Dubin's lifestyle included excessive drinking, eating, and drugs at the time, and he packed 300 pounds onto his 5'9" frame, so he's actually a little taller than I am. And my vice is eating, but fortunately I don't indulge in the other two. All this began to cause him health problems in the early 1940s, and he died of barbiturate poisoning and pneumonia on February 11th, 1945. He was survived by 2 daughters and his wife, Helen McClay. And unquote. So there's the bio of Al Dubin that the masses have been pleading for all this time. And just to wrap up this commentary, I actually have a list of some of the songs that Al Dubin, most of them that he co-wrote with Harry Warren, of songs that were used in various Warner Brothers shorts, because those two are two of the most prominent people that Carl Stalling used. I would say Harry Warren and Al Dubin, obviously classical composers like Wagner and Rossini, Raymond Scott. Those are the big wigs that Carl Stalling would quote from. But here are some of the songs that have been used in Warner Brothers cartoons that were co-written by Al Dubin. Usually he wrote the lyrics and Harry Warren wrote the music. And if there's another composer, I will specify it on this list. But assume all are Harry Warren, Al Dubin. A Cup of Coffee and Sandwich with You, lyrics by Al Dubin and Billy Rose, music by Joseph Meyer, 1925. Tiptoe Through the Tulips, Joe Burke, 1929. I could think of the first Bosco cartoon, Sinking in the Bathtub, which features Tiptoe Through the Tulips with me. 42nd Street, from the musical of the same name. It was published in 1932, and it later became a film. Shuffle Off the Buffalo, also from 42nd Street. Young and Healthy, 42nd Street. We're in the Money, from the musical Gold Diggers of 1933. Pettin' in the Park, also from Gold Diggers of 1933. I Only Have Eyes for You, which was also in the film Dames, which the 2 songs that were used in this cartoon are from. And there's going to be a Merry Melody in 1937 of the same name, I Only Have Eyes for You. Think of a bird imitating the crooner inside the ice truck. And I think of one of the most famous recordings of I Only Have Eyes for You that was recorded in the 1950s by the Flamingos, the doo-wop group. Love that recording. Dames, the ones I mentioned before. Go Into Your Dance, from the musical Go Into Your Dance from 1935. There's going to be a Merry Melody featuring that song down the road. The Lullaby of Broadway from Gold Diggers of 1935. From, guess what year? Say it with me, 35. Don't Give Up the Ship, from the film Shipmates Forever. So you'll hear that a lot in cartoons with naval scenes. With Plenty of Money in You. With Plenty of Money. It's one of my personal favorite Warner Brothers cues. Of course, there's a Merry Melody with the same name, and that is from Gold Diggers of 1937. September in the Rain, from the film Melody for Two, and there's another Merry Melody from 1937 featuring that song. The Song of the Marines, from the film The Singing Marine, 1937. If you're wondering what that song is, that's Over the Sea, Let's Go, Men. We're shoving right off again. I know Dick Powell sang that originally, and thinking of that song, the Song of the Marines, there's Porky the Gob that features it in the beginning, and Conrad the Sailor that feature that song. You have the Latin Quarter. The Latin Quarter. That's from the film Gold Diggers of 1938. I actually have to record very soon a commentary for Daffy's Southern Exposure, but in that cartoon, it features the Latin Quarter with altered lyrics. That's a scene where the wolf is chopping up the can of beans and offering it to Daffy. Let me take your order, da-da-da-da-da-da, so on and so forth. Love that cartoon. Can't wait to talk about it. And also we have Where Was I? And he wrote this one actually with W. Frank Harling, and that's from 1939. That's I'm thinking of Hollywood Steps Out. You hear that one playing in the background. And yeah. So there's a lot of great music that Al Dubin wrote the lyrics for and collaborated a lot with Harry Warren. Just absolute great stuff. So these are my thoughts for The Girl on the Ironing Board. There's not much to talk about with the cartoon itself. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, it's kind of neat that the clothes actually have a personality to them. You don't have to worry about the faces or the eyes, but it was, pretty generic Merry Melody from this time, but I thought the musical trivia was more interesting than the cartoon itself. So, thank you for listening. Please follow me on social media at The Toony Tenor, at TheToonyTenor. for more about my life as a musician and a multifaceted geek. Thank you for listening. Have fun with the rest of the commentary with Anthony, and have a great time. Happy New Year. I'm recording this on January 2nd, 2024. And most importantly, that's all, folks.
That's all, folks.
Thank you, Manny. So as for a score, look, this is a nice little gem of a short. It's not a go-to short. It's made me laugh a few times. Look, 6.5 out of 10 I think is fair. It's pretty nice to see, especially in this restoration, which again I hope comes in physical media one day. But in any case, that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take care.